First things first, I'm a little bit sick. Like over the last few days, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. So if I sound a little bit yucky or congested in this video, that's why, but we're going to power through it. And speaking of sickos, you know what's always bothered me about like the landscape of what it means to be an NBA fan is when you have a bunch of people who are piling on a certain fan base because they're celebrating winning a game, and just because it's in the regular season, they're like not allowed to be excited about it. And while I would never make an individual video talking about one specific game that happened, that is kind of what this is, because this is about people getting mad at Sixers fans because they beat Denver, and because it's only January, they're supposed to act like they've been there and like it doesn't really matter. I just think that's kind of lame, because if I'm a fan of a team and like a bar has been set, there are expectations, we have championship aspirations, and I go up against a team that I know our expectations are aligned. And not only that, but there's a very real chance that I'm playing this team in June, or if it's the same conference, I could be playing them in late April or into May. But for this case, we're looking at a very real chance that these are going to be the two teams playing in the NBA Finals. So yeah, I don't give a damn if it's October, if it's November, if it's December, if it's January, if it's Rectober. I don't care when it is. If I have a chance to beat this team, I'm going to do it. And especially when it's in the fashion that the Sixers were able to do it, because they let up 72 points in that first half, and everybody's getting on their case, which, by the way, I just want to say for posterity, the Pistons let up 81 in the first half against Milwaukee like a week ago. So you're not on our level. But like, this is also a team, if I'm speaking from the perspective of a Sixers fan, which I never thought that would be a sentence that I would say, but if I am, I'm looking at this team, meaning Denver, as like, okay, well, your best player is the reason that my favorite player has been left off first team All-NBA for the last few years, right? Your best player is the reason that my best player has been robbed of, if not one, then two MVPs. So yeah, like I would imagine that would feel pretty good to be a Sixers fan. Like, you are allowed to have that 24-hour kind of run around and be like, look, we did this thing. This was a really big moment. Our best player stepped up on the big stage. This matters. And I like it because just based on cities alone, like Denver and Philadelphia is never really a rivalry, if that's what you want to call it, that you would expect. Like conventionally, it's not like New York and Boston or like New York and Los Angeles, just from a big market standpoint. But it's like, what I love so much about both of these players, meaning Jokic and Embiid, is in a league that for the last 10 years has become increasingly more dependent on your ability to dominate the three-point line. It's like rising from the ashes are these two bigs. And while Embiid is this just unfathomable scorer, I mean, well, they both are, but I mean with Embiid in the sense that on a nightly basis, you will watch him bring the ball up the floor. The second he crosses half court, he is looking everybody off, and he knows that the second he gets above the break from 25 feet, he's letting that thing fly right between the eyes nearly every single time. My brain can't really comprehend it. Like, somebody just with that frame, that size, being able to move that quick, that fluidly, and shoot that efficiently is something that I just can't. My brain just, the wires get crossed, and I don't know how to do it. And this is only really going to get worse when Victor Wembanyama is in the league. Like, if my brain isn't already broken, then I'm going to be applesauce a year from now. I think my favorite little joke that Sixers fans have going is it's the 76th season of the NBA. Why not us? Like, if there's a year for the Sixers to win a championship, doesn't it kind of feel like it would be this year? And while I'm not entirely ready to pencil them in for the finals this year, and I would say the exact same thing about Denver, I think the best thing that these two teams have going for them, and again, we're just going to be focusing on Philadelphia today, but this principle does work for Denver as well, is, you know, historically, when you look at teams that have won championships, the immediate thing that's going to stick out is you have guys on that roster who have defined roles, and on a nightly basis, it's going to be obvious, right? You're going to be like, okay, so this is what this guy does, this is what this guy does. It's not like a who's who of like, what are we going to get out of this guy tonight? You always have those wild cards, and sometimes that's the most fun, but you know what I mean? Like, for the most part, everybody is like established and you know what they do. And with the Sixers, it's fun because the Tobias Harris piece of this is like, him getting relegated off to the corner as like a fail-safe, like, hey, in case of emergency, pass it off to the corner and Tobias Harris will knock it down. For most players, that would kind of feel like even to phrase it that way, getting relegated off to the corner, it almost feels like a punishment, like you're being forsaken. It's like, just get out of the way. Like, just move. We're going to go like 5 out and you're just going to go over there. But with Tobias, it's like, no, dude, that's just what he does because he's been a certified bucket getter for so long. Even with James Harden, through all his ups and downs and media mishaps or whatever you want to call it, the drama that comes with having him on your team, it's like what I really respect and appreciate about him now is like it almost feels like it's one of the first times in his career where he's comfortable and confident with what's around him. And I think you could use like maybe the 2018 Rockets as another example, which, by the way, is a team that PJ Tucker was also on. You know, in the sense that like it almost feels like he's more comfortable and a little bit more confident with deferring in some bigger moments. And it's not like a matter of him questioning his own ability or not believing that he can knock down shots because it's James Harden and he knows that he can hit anything. But it's one of those things where it's just about trusting your teammates. And I think that's something that has kind of plagued him throughout his career. Like, you know, Chris Paul's hamstring's not walking through that door, but guess what? You have Joel Embiid now, so that's pretty nice. And, you know, since I brought up PJ Tucker, I guess I do have a quick, like, 30 seconds that I could do on him. I think he's kind of, like, cheating. But I don't mean this in a mean way. Like, this is not like a PJ Tucker, like, we need to, like, go get this guy. I'm not sicking the dogs on PJ Tucker. I just mean, like, how does he keep getting away with, like, for the last 8 years, his way of defending people is just leaning on them, like, really hard, like, putting all of his body weight onto dudes and, like, hand checking. Like, that's just what he does, but it works, and it doesn't get called. But I like it. I know a lot of you guys out there are bummed that Joel Embiid isn't starting in the All-Star game. I believe I've done this spiel before as well. I'm going to rehash this because I think it's important to bring this up literally every single time the All-Star starters come out. Respectfully, you do not care. Unless that player is on your team, and even then you probably don't really. Like, Joel Embiid is still getting in the All-Star game. You don't need to explain to me, like, the importance and the significance of, like, just kind of, like, feeling like, oh, cool, like, he is really one of the... Like, I get it. I get why it's important. But at the end of the day, I could say in 5 years, but I'm just going to say in 6 months, in 365 days, every one of the dudes on the All-Star team is going to have the same little star next to their name on Basketball Reference. You know what I mean? When you look them up on Wikipedia, it'll still say, you know, 3-time All-Star, not 3-time All-Star and 2-time starter. Like, nobody actually cares about that unless it's in the present moment. So it's not like Joel Embiid, because he's not starting in the All-Star game, he's not going to make it. Like, of course he is. I also wonder, like, when it comes to MVP voting and just award voting in general, how much the psychology of everything kind of factors into it. And if you don't think it matters, I implore you to just think about it for 2 seconds, right? Because Joel Embiid kind of pointed this out last night. Like, if he wasn't trolling everybody all the time, if he wasn't doing wrestling moves on the court and getting fined $25,000, which is just funny, by the way, and if he wasn't just kind of being an asshole all the time and he was a little bit more likable, like, would he be getting more critical acclaim? Would he be getting more accolades? Would he be getting more, you know what I mean? Like, would the trophy case be filling up if Joel Embiid just went on, like, a PR... Like a, you know what I mean? Because what's the argument here? I don't know. Because Joel Embiid is sometimes mean to people on Twitter or in real life, and Jokic is like doing post-game interviews and is like, look at those people are kissing in the stands. They're enjoying life right now. And you're just kind of like, aw, Jokic, that's so cute. And then everybody's like, but you know what he does do? He wins a lot of games. And he scores a lot of points. And that's the one thing I would concede about it, like being kind of weird that he didn't start in the All-Star game, is that how are you leading the league in scoring, but then people are like, see, this is why I just think the psychology part of it matters, but maybe it doesn't. I wasn't really sure how to fit this piece of everything into the video. And I honestly don't think I'll ever be able to find like a coherent or cohesive way to like make this flow. So I'm just going to throw out some takes. Maybe we'll end on this. I have no idea. But from a fashion perspective, can I just give some props to Aaron Gordon? I'm a huge, huge fan of the single calf sleeve on one leg, full sleeve on the other leg, wearing the compression shirt, and then whatever accessories you got on your wrist, maybe wearing a headband, something like that. I love it. Okay? And I also love, and this has been well documented, I think, well, maybe it's kind of divisive, though. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys will let me know. The single full sleeve from Steph, right? Not the shooting sleeve, but the single full sleeve. Mwah! I love it. It's reminiscent of when Chris Paul in his last years with the Clippers, when he would wear the compression shirt, but then he had the full sleeve on the other, and then he would wear like ankle socks. Dude, that shit was so hard. Anytime I play 2K, anytime I do My Player, at some point I will give him the old Clippers Chris Paul. I don't know how I didn't mention this. The reason I mentioned that about PJ Tucker, all the stuff I said about him leaning on people defensively, which again was not a slight. I think it's hilarious and I love it. And because he's so likable, that's why I think I'm fine with him getting away with it. Like, if it was a player that I didn't like, I would be like, jail, prison, but it's PJ Tucker. What are you going to do? Like, be mad at him? Like, probably not. But that's what they did in the second half of that game. They were like, PJ Tucker, go lean on Jokic. And then by Jokic standards, right, which the bar is pretty high for that, like a bad Jokic night is like I would dream to have that in the NBA. You know what I mean? But that's what PJ held him to in that second half. And that's why the Sixers were able to win that game. That shit matters, dude. It matters. It doesn't matter when it is, because especially if you're an Eastern Conference team and you're playing a Western Conference team, you have at most 2 shots at that team in the regular season. Sometimes it's only 1, right? So you have to make the most of it, and that's your only opportunity to get like real concrete tape on this team, your best, 7 or 8, probably 8 or 9 against their best 7, 8, or 9. So Sixers fans, by the time this video is uploaded, your 24 hours will have ended. And I also think part of it is just maybe because, unless you live in Pennsylvania, you're a Philadelphia native, like the truth of the matter is people aren't going to root for you. Like I know historically, like you guys are the ones who booed Santa Claus. But honestly, I think I'm so infatuated with the idea and like just the media narrative that will evolve from it's the 76th season, why not the 76ers? I think I'm kind of on board with it. I still really want Milwaukee. I don't know, dude. It's one of those things where, like, if you look at, like, what's the craziest finals matchup that you could think of where you're like, dude, that's like a basketball junkie's dream. I tell you what, dude, I really think, respectfully, I think it's Milwaukee and New Orleans. Like, imagine Giannis and Zion going at it. You could do Boston and New Orleans. I think that's kind of what it comes down to is like, well, but then how do you leave out Golden State? Because if you really care about basketball, you do want Golden State in there. I just mean for the sake of doing something new, right? Doing something I love Golden State. They're great. I love Steph. I love dynasties. Awesome. We've been there, done that. I'm not saying I don't want them to win, but it's like, that's what made Phoenix and Milwaukee so fun, right? Because either way, somebody's getting there first. It's 2 teams. It's finally refreshing, especially after a decade where like parity wasn't really that great, to have these 2 teams rise up. And the truth is, I'm kind of being unfair here because Philadelphia does fit into that mold. Like, technically, yeah, I'm the one who was like, hey, you guys haven't won anything. Well, that means that Philadelphia and a team like New Orleans, that would be good. I do technically want to throw Boston in there. History would suggest that that's not fair. I just mean in the principle that it's like I want to see Jason Tatum and Malcolm Brogdon and Jaylen Brown go do something. And I think that against a team like but the league is so much better when Brandon Ingram is playing, dude. I tell you what, there is nothing that makes me happier than I just want Brandon Ingram to play basketball like forever. He's one of those dudes where he's somehow like perpetually slept on and underrated and is just always going to be one of those chronic, if you know, guys. And boy, do I know.